Hey Jerky Buddies, thanks for joining me again today. We're going to work into all three of the glutes. So no matter what size or shape body you have, the glutes are the biggest set of muscles in your body and they have the most work to do. They're where you get your power from. So when you're getting up out of the car or out of a chair, off the toilet, up the stairs, all kinds of things, you really have to marshal the strength of your glutes. And especially for people who have poor core strength or poor posture, it's often true that weak glutes are a contributing factor. So I have a couple pieces of equipment with me today. You don't necessarily need them. I have a 10-pound weight. If you don't have hand weights at home, well, first of all, congratulations on making such reasonable choices in your life. But if you don't have a hand weight, you could use a water bottle or a milk jug or a heavy bic or a can of soup, something like that, if you wanted to add just a little bit of resistance. And I also have a bench with risers. You definitely don't need one of these, and you definitely don't need to spend any extra money on such an item. If you wish, you can use a low coffee table or the edge of a couch. You could even put your feet up on a set of yoga blocks if you have them, or again, a thick book without the dust cover on it so that it won't slide away from you. I'll be standing on this at some point, and so again, that's where the blocks or the book might come in, but you can also just not use any kind of incline, and the same is true for the hand weight. You don't have to use any kind of equipment at all in order to get the most from this. Let's start with your seated cat and cow, just arching and flexing the spine. So a lot of people are quite strong in the quads and hamstrings, front and back of the thighs. If you want, you can add a rotation to that cat and cow. It's called Sufi grind. It just gets a little deeper into the hips if you want it. But if you're real strong on the front and the back of your thigh, sometimes your glutes will just let your thighs do the work. Your body really likes to conserve energy. So if the glutes think that the hamstrings are going to do the work for you, they'll just rest and wait. Let's take the feet wide, and you can come forward, stretching out the inner thighs. And that's another thing, that's a lot of people who have weak glutes also have bad knees. One of the reasons is the insides and outsides of the thighs aren't very strong to shore up the sides of the knees. So especially lateral movements or changing directions quickly can result in shin splints, ACL tears, things like that. So if you have a knee that pops a lot, you either have a ligament that's too tight or too loose and could be benefited by working the insides and outsides of the thighs because they connect in on the sides of the knee. And then your glutes would also help your knees not have to do so much work because you get your power from further up. Good. And let's just give the toes a little reach. The first thing let's do is come onto your right side, onto the either the forearm, or you can extend all the way out. We did some of this work in the medius and obliques video, so we're not going to spend a whole lot of time in glutes or glute medius. So the toe should point forward, not up, and just give yourself a little bit of a pulse motion here. You want to be at hip height or above. You don't want your foot below the height of your hip because that'll pull on your sacrum. So you're using this outside part, the gluteus medius, and you're also using the abductors on the outsides of the thighs. The leg is about 35 pounds on average, so you're using some pretty small muscles to hold the weight of your leg, and other muscles are engaging to help with that process. That's just sort of the target area. And a lot of times yoga teachers will refer to the general major muscles, but there's layers of muscles. So these deep stabilizer muscles by the bones, we often don't call by name. We'll refer to the major muscles on the surface up by the skin. They're a little easier to identify. So because we talked about the inside of the thigh, your adductors, we're going to do the fabio. So you're going to set your foot in front of your other leg. You don't want it behind because that can pull on your sacrum and really tear up your lower back. So this is sort of a stopgap for you. And then you flex your bottom leg, pull in with your belly first, make sure that's engaged, and then you lift the foot as high as you can. Some people aren't going to get their foot very high up off the floor at all, and that's really fine. It's more of a function of how your body is shaped skeletally than anything to do with your strength or your flexibility. So your foot's going to come up however high it's going to come up, is what I'm trying to say there. And now we are going to flip over onto the belly before we revisit the other side. So come onto your belly. And the first thing we're going to do is get the glutes and the hamstrings working together. Over-strong hamstrings aren't going to help you, but you do need strong hamstrings to support the glutes. So they're sort of the shelf upon which the glutes sit, and they work together and talk to each other about who's going to do what work. So we're going to work both at the same time. You should be able to feel the top of your iliac crest, the front of your hip bone, that bony protrusion. And if you need to, you can keep your fingers on it. This needs to stay on the floor to protect your back and to isolate the work where we want it. So you're just going to lift your foot, just one foot, doesn't matter which one, but you're not alternating, you're staying on the same side. And keep that front part of your pelvis on the floor. If you let it come up, that means you'll be twisting and ultimately using your low back. And for a lot of people who have weak glutes, they have that lordosis. They are sort of sway backed in the lower part of their back. They use their back more than their glutes anyway, and so that just is going to compound the problem. So you're not going to, again, get your foot up very high, and that's okay. We don't want it to come up very high in this particular case. And we'll change sides. So again, if you need to keep your fingers on your iliac crest, you can, just to keep track of it and make sure that you are not twisting through the lumbar or sacral area. And again, the leg is about 35 pounds, so you're using your glutes and your hamstring to lift a pretty significant amount of dead weight that's sort of clumsily arranged. You know, it's not evenly distributed, this 35 pounds. You know, it's heavier at the top. Good, so we're coming back to the other side. You're going to flex at your knee and at your foot, your ankle. And it's like you're trying to put a footprint on the ceiling. This time it is okay for your hip bone to come off the floor. You're going to kick your foot up like you're trying to stamp your foot on the ceiling. And it should get your knee up off of the floor. If you have really long legs, your knee might not come up at all. But one thing to watch out for, if you have on your hand, you will keep going, but if you're very externally rotated, like I am, your foot can kind of come out to the side. If you're really internally rotated, it'll go to the other side. We want it as straight up and down as we can. So because I'm very externally rotated and tend to go off to the outside, my medius glutes are really strong, but minimus and maximus are quite weak. So I've got to work a little harder at it to try to get as straight up and down as I can. Let's change sides. All right. Now you're going to bring your knees out to the side slightly and soles of the feet together. And you're just going to make this wood chopping motion with your heels. It's okay if your heels touch your hips. It's okay if they don't. You're not trying to get them to touch. What you're doing is you're just contracting this hamstring, and that's what's pulling your knees and feet inwards. This is getting that underbutt area where all this stuff meets. And for people who have a banjo butt that's just really flat, they can turn to the side and they have no curves. Their butt just goes straight down the back of their leg, like me. This is a really important area to work. That's what's going to fluff it up back there. And if you're already fluffy back there, you need to be strong back there. So don't abandon this because you're afraid of how it might look. This isn't going to bulk you up, it's just going to make you stronger. If there are no low back conditions, you can take the frog kicks. If you do have some low back stuff, you can stick with this wood chopping motion. You're going to bring your knees in just a little bit more, and again, the soles of the feet are together. Now you're going to kick your hips and your feet up and back like a lawnmower starter. So not straight back, not straight up and back. Let's bring that down and flip over onto your left side. So we'll take that pulsing sort of motion again. Again, we want the toes pointed forward, not up. You can tuck your bottom foot in or use it as a kickstand if you like, or if you want more core challenge, you can keep the leg extended, and that narrows your base of gravity and the surface area on which you can distribute your weight. Remember, core strength is really about weight distribution, so balance, but that distribution of weight is always kind of uneven inherently because of the way we're shaped. So that's what gives you the instability when you are doing balance work, is that it's hard to find that equilibrium with uneven body weight. And set your foot down again in front of the leg. If it's back here, it might not hurt you right away, but it will catch up with you eventually. So it's always a good idea just to get in the habit of doing good form. So my friends who have banjo butt, just real flat, you could put 5 strings across there, lay across somebody, and they could play turkey in the straw. Also, I won't name names, but I have a student whose wife says that he has a shovel butt, because it looks like someone just whacked him with a shovel. And he's a runner, a former marathon, half marathon runner. So obviously very strong in the lower body, but still has that body shape. So it's always a good idea to make sure that you are working your glutes, even if you think you're strong. If you have that shape body, you must be doing glute work. And it might not be that you end up with a Beyonce butt ever, but it is a good idea to keep working. Even if you're not seeing mass, you might feel a difference in the strength, and that will improve your running or your posture, core strength, etc. Let's come into all fours on hands and knees. So as always, it's okay if your wrists are out ahead of your shoulders just a hair, but we really don't want them way out ahead. You want wrist, fists, or elbows generally under the shoulders. So as always, if being on the palms of the hands is bothersome to the wrist, you can take gorilla fist so that your wrist stays straight, or you could be down on your forearms if you wanted to be. So we're going to extend your right leg out parallel to the floor. And again, kids, if you're real externally rotated, there's a temptation to twist. We don't want that. Sort of imagine that there's an anchor attached to your iliac crest, and you might just hold here. Or if you feel like you can do a little bit of movement, you can take some circles, but make sure that your circles don't mean that you're getting a twist going. We want the shoulders and hips as even as possible. And if you are staying on your wrists or your fists, make sure that you're not locking out your elbows. They can be straight but not locked out. The tendonitis fairy will come visit you if you don't watch your posture. Good, let's pull this in, and same thing, other side. So you should be pulling your belly button up toward the ceiling. So you never want to drop your belly. Keep your back as flat as you can. And I will notice a lot of students in class will tuck their chin to the chest. Don't do that. Sort of look down between the index fingers. Keep your neck in line with the rest of your spine. If you do drop your head, it puts about 70 pounds of pressure on cervical vertebrae 7. That's 70 pounds. And necks really don't like to have that kind of pressure or weight on them. Good, we're going to pull this in. We're taking Turbo Dog, and Turbo Dog is no one's favorite, but it is very helpful for people who cannot do plank because it bothers their low back. So what you do for Turbo Dog is you curl your toes under and bring your shins out parallel to the floor. Just as you would for plank, you're pulling your belly up and keeping your back nice and flat. If you want extra, you can tap. And let's down dog it. And you might like to walk your dogs or bicycle pedal your feet. Get a little deeper to the hamstrings and Achilles because we're getting ready to switch to using the incline in a moment. So let's stretch out what we've done so far. You can walk your hands and feet toward one another. Sitting bones pointing up to the ceiling, crown of the head pointing to the floor. No locked knees, and weight should not be in your heel. The knees should be soft and the weight in the ball of your foot. If your knees are agreeable to the whole thing, you could take garland pose, putting your heels on the mat, toes to the outside, and dropping your hips down. And it's not very ladylike, but I like to push my knees backwards. I've got really tight hip tendons. So if you are a tight hip person who always wants to do lizard and hip flexor stretches, all the hip openers, this garland pose is a really good one to try to get into, provided your knees are on board with the idea. Good. And we'll bring it up. So I'm going to use the weight now. If you want to, you can. If you don't have a weight, don't want to use the weight, you can just put your hands on your hips, and that's fine too. No wrong or right way to do this. I've cleverly hidden my 35-pound weight from myself in my garage, so I'm only using 10. Feel free to hide your heavy weights from yourself as well. So I'm grabbing the weight by the weight caps, and I'm going to put my left foot behind me, ball of the foot to the floor, and my right knee is bent. If you want, you can use the incline. It gives you a little bit extra. You are going to leave your legs just as they are. You're going to drop the weight to the inside of your knee. You don't want it out in front or over to the side. And you're only moving from the hips. Your legs are not going to move or change. So flat back, dip it down, and you're going to push into your heel on the front side, and that brings you up. So your back is flat, your belly relaxes on the way down. To come up, you push into your heel and pull your belly button back toward your spine. So again, you're going to feel that underbelly area, and that's what is engaging to pull you back up, provided you're not about to fall over your own fucking bench that you put there. So it's not even a surprise that it's in your way. I'm glad they don't take away teaching licenses for poor planning. All right, other side. So again, this knee is not bending and straightening. It's always in one spot. The belly's relaxed, suck the belly in. And release. So as always, I'm not using music because of copyright weirdness, so I can't count the measures, and because I have to talk so much, I can't count my breathing, so hopefully we did roughly the same on each side. So you can be on your foot on your yoga block or your book, and this foot on the incline is never going to move. It's your outside foot that's going to move. So you're going to press up. So my left foot was on the left, now my left foot is on the right. Left foot on the left, left foot on the right. Left foot on the left, left foot on the right. And again, if you have hand weights at home, you can add a bicep curl to this or deltoid flies. If you want to, remember that your arms are about 15 pounds each on their own. So what we're doing here is we're getting the lift from maximus and minimus, and then you're getting the control of the side-to-side movement from the medius. And this is sort of the area that you use to break a fall, especially if you were changing direction quickly. like you were in a soccer or a basketball game and you needed to change direction with a lot of agility, this is the area of the body you'd have to work. Let's swap sides. So again, the foot that's on the incline never goes anywhere. So my right foot was on my right, now it's on the left, the right, the left, the right, the left. You can do what you like with the arms, including nothing. If you can juggle while you're doing this, that's fine, don't brag about it. I have a lifelong envy of people who can juggle. Also people who can belch the alphabet. I don't know why I find that so impressive, but I think I was in the 4th grade when I observed some adult male doing that on television. And I just thought, who is this man from Nazareth? He's a wizard. Anyhow, do what you like, who cares? All I'm trying to say. And release. Now we're going to use the incline with your feet and the rest of your torso on the floor. So you'll put your feet up, again, coffee table, edge of the couch, blocks, bench, what have you. And your heels will probably hang up off the side. You don't need to have your feet completely on the bench. They can be down here. And we're going to take our breathing bridges. Squeeze your cheeks, lift your hips, roll them down. Squeeze your cheeks, lift, roll them down. So your tailbone is the first thing to leave the floor. Your tailbone is the last thing to come back. Watch your tailbone more than anything. Arms can be wherever they're happy, out to the side, by your sides, above the head. Again, juggling if you are part magician. And the next time you come up, stay up, and we're going to take those book bridges. So the knees are going out and in, as though you're opening and closing a book. This will get the sides of your glutes, and you really will feel the hamstrings jumping in. So ideally, your glutes will fatigue first, then your hamstrings will jump in and take over. For most people who have that banjo butt, have weak glutes, weak core, poor stability and balance, it's usually that the hamstrings have to fatigue first in order for the glutes to jump in and do their own damn job. Good, and release. We're going to swivel around so that your shoulders can be on the incline. So I like to have it so that the tips of my shoulder blades are on the surface. It just feels more comfortable that way, so I'm not digging the edge of the bench into my scapula. And again, just your breathing bridges. If you want even more, you could come onto the balls of your feet. I just feel like there's no need for that kind of ambition. You'll hurt yourself one way or the other. I don't mean literally injuring, I just mean working really hard. If you do have that weight handy, you can set it across the top of your hips, hang on to it, it will roll. If you have those weight plates, that's even better, they don't get away from you quite so easily. And again, if you don't have this bench, you can also take Tibetan table, where you make yourself the bench. Just make sure that you keep your chin tucked to your chest, don't throw your head back. So let's stretch all that out. Just cross one knee over the other. You should feel that stretch and the outside of where the rump roast would be. Change. So remember, if you are doing just minor glute work as part of some other workout, you're not focusing on them, you might need to fatigue your hamstrings completely first in order to get the glutes going. If you don't do that, you're doing a hamstring workout instead of a glute workout. You won't get the results you're looking for. So if you're doing this on your own, you might need to allow some extra time for your glutes to try to fire for you. And again, let's bring the feet forward. Good, and relax. I hope this was helpful to you. It might not change your body shape or your body type, but it can definitely improve your overall balance and core strength. So I hope this will serve you in some way. See you next time.